What's going on, Oregon fans? How we doing? It is Monday, October 10th, 2022. Hope everybody's having an awesome day, whatever you guys have going on. Get that week started. A lot of people are afraid of Mondays, but, I think that Mondays is a good opportunity to kind of set the tone for the week and just kind of get things off to a good start. We are live on YouTube, youtube.com/Oregon Football Max Torres. Wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Whether you guys are here live, if you're here live, throw a question or comment into the live chat section. Love engaging with you guys and seeing what is on your minds as Oregon turns the page from Arizona to focus on their bye week, kind of getting things right. We're going to talk about that and kind of a little bit of some bye week stuff. But if you're on replay, drop me a comment as well. Let me know what's on your mind with this Oregon football team or Oregon recruiting as well. And make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So a little bit of a shorter episode today. I think I'm going to go about 30 minutes or so is my goal. Let's talk about some of our top takeaways from Oregon's 49-22 win over the Arizona Wildcats. This is a big win for Oregon for a multitude of reasons, right? I think let's kind of get into the first one. Oregon's able to go to Tucson on the road for their first win since 2011. I think they were down there in 2018 when Justin Herbert was still there. And man, Oregon just got clobbered there. So I think one of the big takeaways from this win is that I think after having two wins now, first on the Palouse, really close game, thrilling comeback. Remember that we were saying after that game, Oregon showed they were able to, come back in a game for the first time since probably the pre-Cristobal era. Just because we know how limited that offense was running the ball, how limited they were passing the ball. So Oregon, I think, showed that they can win in a couple different ways, right? That sure, Lanning is talking about that each week, but I think it's true. Not only is it true, it's a good thing. Oregon shows that they can go on the road and win in a tough environment multiple times now. With that first win over Washington State on the road, that was big for their confidence, I think. And then going on the road to Tucson, somewhere the state of Arizona as a whole has not been too kind to Oregon. I think we all know that if you've watched Oregon for any number of years. But you can obviously date back to that Braylon Addison and Vernon Adams catch against Arizona State in Tempe that won that game. Actually, I don't know if it won that game, but that was one of the craziest plays in that game. So case in point, I think that Oregon shows us that they can win in a variety of ways and that they can win on the road. That was one of my biggest questions heading into this season for Oregon is, can they win on the road? I've said it a couple times. What elements of this Oregon team can travel? And I think what we're seeing here from this latest showing, sure, Arizona isn't the best team, but a pretty good majority of the of Oregon as a team traveled really well. I think another good takeaway from this one is that Oregon played a cleaner game. I'm trying to look at the penalties. Let's see. 6 penalties for 56 yards compared to Arizona with 3 for 11. But to go from like 135, I think it was, to 56 was a lot more of kind of what we've grown to expect, right? And I think it was shocking that they had 135 penalty yards in a home game in that game against Stanford. So good to see them kind of lock back in, play a cleaner game, and then just really do everything as far as a well-rounded effort. I think that Lanning said after the game that this was one of, if not the most complete games that Oregon has played so far in 2022. And that's the mark of a good team. You can play a complete game. You don't need the offense necessarily to be rescuing you if your defense is having a rough day. Oregon's offense they got off to a little bit of a slow start, right? But then they found their groove. Bo Nix got into a groove. The running attack got into the groove. And then on defense, they were able to force some turnovers, which is always a plus. Jaleel Florence had his first college interception. Bennett Williams forced a fumble that was recovered by Keonware Hudson. which I think is actually the thumbnail of this video. That was a really cool picture, so I had to use that one. So let's maybe start just talking a little bit about the offense. Because that's kind of that's the funnest thing for me to talk about. But let's just go ahead and look at some of these numbers when we're talking about the offense. Can't hurt to start with Bo Nix, right? The veteran quarterback for Oregon, well, through the portal, but he's a veteran at the college level. Interesting stat line for Bo Nix: 20 for 25 with 265 passing yards, but no touchdowns. But man, he still had a big impact on this game. He finished as the leading rusher for Oregon once again, 8 carries for 70 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Bo Nix just really continues to do whatever this Oregon offense needs of him. I think the deep ball looked a little bit better this week compared to last week against Stanford. I know there were a couple of throws that he would have liked to have back. But the deep ball looks like it was working a little bit better this past week. Certainly had that big pass to Chris Hudson. That was just like 2 yards away from being a touchdown, but heck of an effort from Chris Hudson to connect with Bo Nix and reel that one in. That was the longest passing play of the day for the Ducks, 42 yards through the air. Chris Hudson finished with 2 catches for 60 yards, 19 yards after the catch. And just on the topic of the wide receivers, I think that one thing that the word I think that stands out the most to me about these wide receivers is balance, because that's something that they kind of had last year, but we really knew that Devin Williams was the number one guy. He at least certainly came on as the number one guy as the season progressed. Troy Franklin was the freshman that played the most, but now looking at this Oregon team, I think you have Troy Franklin as your solidified number one guy, but there's still other guys that contribute and kind of do their own part, kind of pull their own weight. We saw Seven McGee get involved again with a quick pass in this game, and then he had some really nice yards after the catch. Great to see Seven again. I think he would have gotten even more yards if he didn't trip up on that play that I think it was over the middle that he really stuck out and made his impact in this game. But Chase Cota continues to make an impact as well. 3 catches for 60 yards, long of 30. And I believe his catch was kind of a catch and run too. And then we already talked about Chris Hudson, Troy Franklin with 3 for 38. So I think it was a little weird that Oregon didn't have any touchdowns through the air, but they still had an overall effective day through the air. No turnovers, just 5 incompletions for Bo. And I think what's also cool about Bo is that they've had games. I can't remember what the stat was. It was I want to say it was just, let me see if I can find this stat that I was looking for. It was something about the pass attempts, but I don't think I have it here. Okay, yeah, I don't have it. But basically the stat that I was looking for is the point I was trying to make, rather. Oregon's been able to have Bo Nix, if they really want to air it out, they can ask him to do that. And he's pretty comfortable, it seems, throwing, 35, 40 times a game if they need him to. But then he also has the ability to hurt you with his legs. And I think what was cool with this last game is that you didn't necessarily see a lot of short yardage rushing touchdowns. He's able to get out in space and make some guys miss and sprint up the sideline and do some damage there. Rushing 8 times for 70 yards and 3 touchdowns, matching his career and season high for rushing touchdowns. I think that that's an interesting mark because it shows how effectively he's being utilized in this offense. He's taking care of the ball. He looks comfortable. He's taking risks. And it just seems like Kenny Dillingham, this reunion, has been just what the doctor ordered for Bo Nix and really for Oregon's offense and Oregon's passing attack. I think that I didn't see Bo Nix having this kind of a season, and now there's chatter I think is getting legitimized with each good week he has. Is Bo Nix a legitimate Heisman contender? Oregon's only lost 1 game so far, obviously, with that drumming against Georgia. I think you'll see the same result for a lot of teams that go up against that Bulldog squad this year. But he's showing that maturity, the poise, the composure, the big playability. He can make a variety of throws. And Oregon's schedule, I think, has some really good big time games coming up, right? You have the next game that Oregon is going to be having on October 22nd against UCLA with those really cool uniforms that they just dropped. UCLA looks like they could legitimately be the top team in the Pac-12 after knocking off Utah. So that's a big game to see how Bo Nix can perform. And then Utah comes back to Autzen Stadium for a little bit of a revenge game. So I think if he can perform really well in those two games, he's only going to be strengthening his Heisman case. And he's putting together a pretty legit resume right now, just with how he's able to hurt you. He's not making a lot of mistakes. The offensive line is playing tremendous. I saw that was a comment here. So that's obviously a big part of why he's playing so well. But I think he's executing the game plan the way that they need him to each week. And he's really emerged as the one of the stars of this offense, but probably the main star just with how this season has gone. And then we have to talk about the rushing offense too, right? Bucky Irving, he continues to make a big impact, and it's not just him. This was kind of interesting. So Bucky Irving led the Ducks with 12 carries for 67 yards. So he had the most carries, but Jordan James, the true freshman, was right behind him, 10 carries for 69 yards with a long of 24. So I think Bucky's a star. We already knew that. He made some good receiving plays out of the backfield too. Noah Whittington had a touchdown as well, 6 carries for 92 yards. So he was the leading rusher for the Ducks. I was watching that game, man, and Noah Whittington has some awesome vision, and it really feels like the more the season goes on, there's not that much of a drop-off, if any, between Bucky Irving and Noah Whittington. Both those guys run super hard. They're both capable pass catchers. And I think that the vision is one of the big takeaways as far as a difference between last year's offense and this year's Oregon offense. Is it seems like, last year when CJ was healthy, there were times when throughout his career really where it just felt like he wasn't really reading the blocks right, and he was running into the backs of his offensive linemen. But it looks like Bucky and Noah are really, really in sync with this offensive line. They were able to rotate in a number of underclassmen, less experienced offensive linemen in this game, and that's crucial. Those are crucial developmental reps that you need to be getting, that this Oregon team, quite frankly, wasn't getting at all last year. Maybe we need to talk about that as a kind of a broad takeaway. Maybe I can go a little bit more in depth on this as we're in the bye week, but the way that Oregon's been able to win a number of games handedly, that's something that Mario Cristobal, at least last year, and this Oregon team, they flat out were not able to do. And what's one of the results about that? One of the results of that is that you have a lot of guys that are these highly touted recruits that aren't ready to come into games in big time situations. You can't get those guys developmental reps, and then, heaven forbid, you lose one of your biggest key contributors, and then it's their time to shine, and they're not ready because they haven't seen the field. I just think that that's one of the biggest takeaways for me. I feel like I've said it a bunch of times, so I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think that's one of the biggest takeaways, one of the biggest positives early on in this Oregon football season is that they've been able to put teams away that they are supposed to beat. Maybe it was a little bit closer on the Palouse against Washington State, but that was the first true Pac-12 road game. But Arizona, obviously, as we know, hasn't been kind to them, and they were able to go in there and just make Arizona look awful. And I think that that's definitely a testament to this coaching staff, these players, the development. Ty Thompson was able to get in again, didn't put together a crazy stat line, just 3 for 4 with 9 yards. Really curious why we didn't see Jay Butterfield or why we're not seeing more of him when Oregon's able to get some of the backups in. But the last thing I wanted to talk about on offense before I wanted to switch gears to defense a little bit is how cool is it to see Maliki Matavao on that tight end sweep touchdown run. I think just we're seeing more under center plays than we've seen in years for Oregon. I don't even think I was following Oregon the last time they were playing this much under center. So I think that just seeing the creativity and all the different things that Kenny Dillingham and this team are able to throw at you, just make Oregon such a difficult offense to prepare for. Terrence Ferguson also had some catches in this game, 2 catches for 19 yards. And the Maliki's getting more involved. We see that the jumbo 14J formation when they bring in 4 tight ends, I think it is. They line up under center and they bring in Josh Connerly. That's the J in the 14J. So he's playing a whole lot, and it's awesome to see. So Oregon's offense continues to put up a ton of points and a ton of yards. Total offensive yards for Oregon, 580. 306 of those yards came on the ground for 7.5 yards per carry, 7 rushing touchdowns. It's just been a show to watch with this Oregon offense. And I think while they maybe didn't start as fast as they wanted to, once they found that groove, everything was all good. And that allows the defense to go out and take the field with, a whole lot of confidence, I think. And we're going to talk about the defense right after the break. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We got more Oregon football talk after this. Welcome back to the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres. We are live on YouTube, youtube.com/Oregon Football Max Torres. However you're tuning in, wherever you're tuning in, we appreciate you being here, whether you're listening on a podcast, maybe you're driving in the car, maybe you're at the gym, just looking for your duck fix, or you're here on YouTube, and we really appreciate it. So let's talk about Oregon's defense. This was a comment from Shadow Faction 24 saying defense is looking a bit better each week, and I'm definitely inclined to agree. I know with Arizona, the big concern or focus, maybe a better word, was the passing attack. And Jacob Cowing, he got his. He had six catches for 77 yards, no touchdowns. The only passing touchdown that they surrendered was to T-Mac, Tyrone McMillan, 5 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown. I really think that this was about as good of a performance as you could have asked for from the secondary, especially considering some of the adversity that they faced with Dante Manning getting ejected for a targeting call. Jaden DeLora, 24 for 42 with 1 interception. That interception obviously coming from Jaleel Florence, the true freshman, who was asked to step up after Dante Manning got ejected. And then 1 touchdown for DeLora, got to him 2 times for a sack. You want to continue to try to see that number, grow each week. 115 rushing yards for Arizona. Not great, 4.6 yards per carry. I think that was a little bit more than the Oregon fans or Oregon coaches maybe wanted to limit Arizona to. But yeah, the key word here is improvement. I think once Dante it was so sad to see Dante get ejected because he's playing that was probably his best game of the year so far. And I feel like with his development, I think he would probably agree that he hasn't reached the level that he probably envisioned for himself, given how long he's been at Oregon. But for a guy like that, that's, not stuck, but you're just kind of waiting for him to break out. I think he really needed one of these games just as a confidence booster. And especially with this quality of a receiving core that they were going up against in Arizona, I think that absolutely could have been, even though he didn't play the whole game, at least he left on a high note. But that's what we got to talk about Jaleel Florence, because he's a true freshman. And it was kind of interesting. There were there was a snap where he lined up across from T-Mac, and I was like, wow, this could have been something we saw in practice like every day, because both of those guys were committed to Oregon. But you got to give a shout out to Jaleel Florence. He got his first interception on a tipped ball, which just shows his awareness and playmaking ability. They did try to pick on him a couple times. I think he was matched up against Dorian Singer, and like I said, Singer got his every now and then. But overall, Jaleel Florence looked real solid. For a true freshman. He even could have had a second interception on that 2-point attempt, but he ended up dropping the ball. So I think that his preparation is definitely a testament to this coaching staff. And you could also say the value kind of reinforces the value of enrolling early, because he got to Eugene during spring ball, but I think it was after spring break. So it wasn't there the whole time, but Demetrius Martin was talking about, how important that was for him. And I think it just helps bridge the gap a little bit. You're able to get You're ahead in the playbook. You're able to kind of adjust to the speed of the college game at practices and in the spring game, of course. You get used to the hustle and bustle of just the college routine, being a student athlete. So I think that we're starting to see some of that depth. I don't know. I still don't know if we have that bona fide number 2 corner for Oregon. Maybe it's going to be Jaleel Florence. I know Triquez Bridges has obviously been there as well in that mix, and then Dante Manning as well. But overall, pretty solid day from the Oregon secondary, all things considered. You have to give a shout out to Bennett Williams because he forced one of the 2 turnovers that Oregon was able to come away with in this game. He had a blitz and then knocked the ball loose from Delora, and Keon Ware-Hudson was able to recover that one. But we always knew that Bennett was a playmaker. So I think when your best players step up and make plays, that's kind of expected. But when you get someone who's maybe a little bit more under the radar or a little bit newer, isn't in the rotation as much like we do with the Jaleel Florence, when you see those guys start to step up and make plays, I think that's where you kind of start to see what kind of a special team you have when you need to go into that depth and you need a big game out of guys like that. Because I think if one of these guys is really able to get rolling at wide receiver specifically, maybe Arizona is able to get some confidence going and then they keep this game a little bit closer. But Oregon was able to pretty much close the door, relatively early. They were up 28-13 at the half. And then they put 21 more on them in the third and only let up 3 points. And then it's kind of a boring fourth quarter with Oregon, held scoreless and Arizona getting 6 points. But they were able to get off to a fast start in that first half once the offense got rolling, and they were able to kind of just keep their pedal to the metal. It's a game that they needed to have, and it made more sense because I feel like Oregon kind of looked like a little bit of the Oregon of old, winning games that they're supposed to win. I think that with the coaching transition and some of the room for growth for Oregon has been that a lot of a game like Cal last year shouldn't even be close, but it is close. And then we've seen what's happened when Oregon hits the road with Utah. And it just seems like this Oregon coaching staff is able to make adjustments. That's another big takeaway is they're able to identify areas where they're maybe a little bit coming up a little short from where they would rather be. And then on a week by week basis, they're able to implement that. Another good thing to see in this game was Justin Flo was able to return and go. He had 4 total tackles in this one. Triquez Bridges had a pass breakup. Christian Gonzalez had a pass breakup. And then as far as the pass rush, I think that the pass rush was showing up more and more this game. Let's see. The pass rush, I look at the comments sometimes and I just kind of have a little bit of a brain fart. But the pass rush, I think it showed up more this game, but maybe not necessarily in the area of sacks. I think you're getting more pushback. You're getting good plays off that front seven. DJ Johnson had some TFLs in this game, especially I think it was defending the run. And let's see what else we got here. It's really kind of just the same guys that are, stepping up and making plays. Jeffrey Bossa had a sack. And that's great. To see more of these guys stepping up, and continuing to have strong seasons. Who else can we talk about here? Let me go ahead and see what else we got here. Okay. Season high 3 takeaways with 2 fumble recoveries and an interception. So that means that, DJ Johnson got 1, and then Keon Ware-Hudson recovered the other one. So they're forcing turnovers, and they're not reliant on turnovers. That's another big comparison between last year's team and this year's team. Some of the turnovers that Oregon was getting in 2021, the offense was so bad, they needed the defense to give them a spark. And they were kind of that bend, don't break defense. That's not the case this year, at least not so far. They've come at maybe more ideal times. The biggest thing I'm just getting at is that last year's defense really seemed like it was reliant on turnovers to kind of save their skin sometimes. But it's harder to move the ball on this Oregon defense, I think, than last year. I like the way that the depth has shown up when guys have gotten hurt or been absent for whatever amount of time. So they're seeing more of those steady contributors. Christian Gonzalez is Christian Gonzalez. I mean, what more do we need to say about him? I think he's quietly putting together probably one of the best defensive back seasons in the Pac-12 right now. And there's legitimate buzz. I think I saw a PFF mock draft that had him at 10th to the Patriots. What do we think about that? For an Oregon defensive back to go in the top 10 would be amazing. I think it would definitely be the highest drafted defensive back for Oregon since Javon Holland. So Christian Gonzalez is a dude for sure, and he shows up every week. You just need to see more of those guys, kind of stepping up and making their impact. Let's see here. What else do we have here? David says Chip Kelly's post game after Utah was great. He said it's hard to replicate a good week of preparation each and every week. Love the process, and it will love you back. Yeah, maybe we can kind of maybe shift a little bit. We only got a couple more minutes left in today's show. We can shift a little bit to kind of where Oregon is at heading into their bye week. I think this is about the best situation that you could have asked for. The only other thing you could have asked for was beating Georgia to open the season, and that's a little bit of a long shot, a little bit far-fetched, right? But you rattle off 5 straight wins. You get 2 prove-it wins, show me games on the road with Washington State and Arizona. And this bye week really comes at the perfect time for Oregon, especially after Utah got that big win over – or UCLA, rather, got that big win over Utah. So you get a chance to rest up, get healthy, and really study the heck out of your next opponent. Ducks are going to be facing the UCLA Bruins on October 22nd at 12:30 p.m. We're waiting to see if that game's going to be on FS1 or Fox. But they also released their new uniforms for the UCLA games, some special Stomp Out Cancer, breast cancer awareness uniforms. Let me see if I can actually bring those up and share my screen before we get out of here. Hold on. There we go. All right. Present. Share my screen. There we go. All right. Here are the uniforms. If you guys are watching along on YouTube, I feel like most people have seen them, but they are up now. You got Brandon Dorless. Love the pink wings, pink cleats, pink logos and lettering. These are just awesome. But I think that, this bye week comes at just the right time for Oregon. Fortunately, not dealing with any crazy injuries right now, can kind of get the team up to speed and get ready. Let's see what we got here. Andrew says, great catch, Max, with Mateo and the duck gloves. Hope it's a sign of things to come. Yeah, if you guys didn't see that, I was at the Mater Dei St. John Bosco game last week, and Mateo was wearing Oregon gloves. I don't think it necessarily means a whole lot, but we know that Oregon's a top school in that one. Let's see here. What else do we got? Rudy says, really seems like this team makes adjustments even quicker than Chip did when we were a second half team. Yeah, and I think that's the mark of a good coach, right? Even though Dan Lanning is so young, he's showing that he has the ability to get his team to buy in, to, hone in on things. Like I said, with the penalties, cleaning that up from week to week. Also, another thing that's interesting is keeping his team disciplined and not letting them celebrate during shout. I think that's an interesting thing. I think that's absolutely one of my favorite parts of going to Oregon games. So I know that it's a little hard for fans to not see the team and players jumping around. But yeah, it seems like they're able to make adjustments and lock in. The preparation's been good. The game planning's been good. That this is just a really, really solid team win and one that they needed. You wonder if with is UCLA on their bye too? I gotta check that. I forgot I was sharing my screen. But let me see. I think UCLA might be on a bye, which is interesting that they're both on byes at the same time. Yeah, they are on a bye. So Oregon and UCLA both meet each other coming off of a bye week, which is interesting. Let's see. We can go through some of these other pictures real quick. I think this is the last one, but really, really cool uniforms. Let me know how you feel about these uniforms for Oregon. We know unis aren't everything, but when you're covering a school like Nike U, you got to give them a shout out. Andrew asks, you think Flo or Sewell is going to spy DTR? Can either keep up with him? Yeah, I think I think I'd probably go with Sewell to spy him just because he's a little bit more experienced. I think Jeffrey Bossa might be the fastest linebacker that they have, so maybe that makes more sense to have him spy DTR. But DTR is an absolute playmaker, no doubt about it. He's going to be a big challenge for Oregon. But the nice thing is that Oregon played UCLA last year, so there's a little bit of carryover, right, with the Pac-12 South matchups. I mean, I guess there's not necessarily divisions anymore, but that's a whole other thing. So those returners for Oregon, they've already played UCLA and DTR, so they know kind of what to expect a little bit with this game. But this goes back to another thing that I've said throughout the year is that Oregon's played a lot of really good quarterbacks already. Some of them with a variety of skill sets, some more mobile guys, fast guys like Jaden DeLora and Jaron Hall, and then maybe some more traditional guys like Tanner McKee, right? So they've got this good blend of experience already when it comes to quarterbacks that they've faced. But I think that's going to do it for me here on this episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Favor to ask you guys, you know the rules. Like the video, smash the subscribe button. We're continuing to grow the show. And then please do me a big favor. Check out ducksdigest.com for the latest written content and share the Ducks Dish podcast with your friends, with your family, with other Duck fans. I'm going to get out of here, guys, but thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast, and we will see you in the next one.